Hello, we are live. Okay, perfect. Let me share my screen. So, everyone, I have had a disaster of a morning, but we are here now, and thanks to the powers of YouTube, this is something that will be available remotely. So, for any of our attendees who maybe were here earlier, we can always send you out the copy. So, let me just double check that you can see my screen. Yep. And that's it. Okay. Perfect. So I am here today to talk to you about winning business strategy, and all the ways in which you can do that. The old way of doing business is already dead. You will probably recognize method products from the supermarket, and there is not a truer testament. We are in the middle of reform. So, who am I and why am I here talking to you? Thank you so much for joining us. I am Stephanie and I'm the founder of ESG Made Easy with 3 years' experience in running this business, which has been amazing. But I have been a passionate environmentalist for for over a decade. And my experience prior to sustainability, which is a very new industry, was in maritime and construction. Um, both of those experiences really shaped my understanding of the real world challenges and opportunities for businesses, and has made me really passionate about empowering businesses to make sure that they're doing as much as they can, and in a way that's better for business too. This webinar today will be about 60 minutes, and it is designed to provide clarity and actionable insights. So please do use the Q&A feature. We have a little chat box on the side here. Just let me know if you have any questions, if you think anything is unclear, or I'll not address it as we're going through it because I'm going through the slides, but we have a section dedicated at the end for questions. Have an incredible offer for anyone who is not on the call, I suppose, because it's a different concept here. We're on a YouTube studio, but for anyone who's watching this video, we do have an incredible offer for you at the end. So, what are the deliverables? Today we'll be talking about the risks of ignoring ESG, how you can think of ESG like good health, and the step-by-step strategy. And just bear with me with the cheesy analogies. I find it so funny when I'm doing something dry, like making webinars, to just put in my little jokes. So I'm just going to imagine that you are laughing along with me. Failure to prepare is preparation to fail, and inaction is a lose-lose for businesses. It can cause all sorts of issues. And actually, before we get to the boat, I will. So it's a lose-lose for business, and I'll maybe explain why that is, because essentially compliance is changing, and the expectations of supply chains, both in public sector and in private sector, are changing, and businesses that don't decide that they're going to be proactive with their ESG position, or what is happening with that in their business, they will end up risking non-compliance in the future. So it is always better to just get ahead of it and know that it's something that's coming along. And there are actually organizations that are losing contracts or losing clients, sometimes in the tendering process because the other people that have tendered have better credentials in ESG, but sometimes and potentially in a much less metricable way. Sometimes these losses happen when your next best competitor actually has a really compelling statement on ESG, and they go out to the market and they're telling everybody about it. And that's where you can really be cut out if you're not going to if you're not going to take action. So we've got a few little analogies to get us started. I know that sustainability is something that is sometimes it's hard to battle with in a business because you think it's not urgent or it's not going to be that important, but actually sustainability is the hole in the boat. It's a hole in the boat that if you fix it, no problem, you're still seaworthy, you will have no issues. But if you don't, this is what you could come home to, at some point. So the whole is, it's like if we think of it as like the growing pressures, regulations, consumer demand, and market competition, and really that threatening of the stability of a business. And in action, if you were on a boat and you saw a hole, you would take action. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're going to ignore it, it's just going to, there's no way in which that's going to work out well for you. So preventative maintenance is essentially where what ESG would be. It would be the looking at things, assessing, fixing before they're broken, and ultimately trying to reduce the costs that a disaster might cause. So what is the problem? What is the problem? Competitors in your market might have a very compelling ESG position, which would mean that they would be winning contracts, securing partnerships, and potentially encroaching on your customers. For example, companies who are certified in B Corp or ISO standards or Ecovadis, all of these are designed to, one, indicate the governance that has gone into it, that it shows that this is a very good quality business, but also particularly for B Corp, Ecovadis, or for SBTi, usually the certification itself encourages all participants to publicise that they've done it. So whenever things like that are happening, and other people are talking about what they've done and what they've done and what they've done, if you can't be a part of that conversation, and as you'll see as we go on and we talk about the strategy, being part of that conversation is not being B Corp certified tomorrow morning. It's actually just about what works for you and thinking about what really matters in your business. Then if we think about operational costs, so many of my clients have actually opened up the conversation around sustainability because their initial ventures in this space have been massive cost saving exercises. And obviously, we're always talking about efficiency and improving efficiency. And if you just extend that out to the efficiency of your building and your business and your logistics and everything, that is actually it's a win-win. But sorry, if we weren't thinking about going back to it, not doing this, your costs will be higher. There's also the regulatory pressures. So all of the governments that signed the Paris Agreement have essentially said that they, as a government, will ensure that their nation reduces the carbon emissions that come from that nation by 50% by 2030. And they signed that in 2015. So although we're not on course for that actually happening, there's still, every time there's a COP, they discuss what is happening, how they're doing it, where they're going with it, and they continue to incentivise. So while we might not get to a 50% reduction in 2030, there is still that international coalitions to make sure that that is something that's happening. So even if you think that your customers aren't going to want it, it's going to come in the other direction, because the government is going to back down and say, do you know what, we will be the one that failed on climate, as we are, experiencing climate events in the news cycles and everything. It doesn't make sense. And politics is a popularity game. No one wants to be that person. So they will do the somewhat unpopular moves of, but they'll also, the best way for them to do it will be to incentivize the best behavior, incentivize best practice. And then we have reputation, so, and your market position. So really, like, who are you in your market? And there's obviously, there are businesses like Innocent Drinks or Ben and Jerry's ice cream or Oatly. They, in their market, they talk about how they are the one that is doing this. And again, for some businesses, that's really not feasible. For some businesses, they don't want to be associated with that. But there is this opportunity to, particularly in an industry where maybe you provide a very similar service or product to your competitors, to differentiate yourself by really leaning into this. And there's so many other reasons why it's beneficial, but the alternative would be that you might just be a part of the noise. So if you're part of the 95% of the ones who are not taking action, then, and actually I'm thinking of one example in particular, is a haulage company that runs on biomethane here in Northern Ireland. They're incredible. I work with them. They're called McCullough Transport. Anyone who thinks about sustainable transport thinks about McCullough. And that's completely correct, because they are absolutely epic. They're doing wonderful things. They have such a huge proportion of their fleet actually running on biomethane. So when they say we run on biomethane, they don't mean we have one truck that runs on biomethane. They have a fleet. It's really, really impressive. It's required a lot of investment from them, a lot of commitment from them, but ultimately it really helps to secure their future position in the market. So now when people talk about transport, there's probably another 8 or 10 companies that maybe, come to mind. So when we say, tell me tell me transport companies. Okay, here you go. Tell me sustainable transport companies. McCullough. That's it. There isn't any other part of that conversation. So that's the kind of opportunity in that. And then obviously your profit margins. So as a part of the operational costs, we have had one client who's been able to reduce their cost of their waste by like 45% by moving one skip, and increasing their kind of the way in which they approach waste in the business. So lots of problems if you're on one side of it, or if we flip that, lots of incredible opportunities. And I'll just do a check here, make sure that yes, that's looks all right. So even if you operate in what is considered a bad industry, where sustainability isn't relevant, it is always relevant. So again, my background, maritime and construction, and I'm just going to do one wee thing because I don't want that to disrupt. What was that down to? An industry are not renowned for having any positive impact at all whatsoever, but there is actually some underlying positive impacts of that industry. And I'm not saying this to be like, yay, super yachts, they're so cool. No, it's more, no matter what your perception of your industry is, or you might think, oh, actually, no, but we're minerals, so we don't do that, or, we're mining, so we don't do that, or we're petrochemical, so we can't be a part of this conversation. While all that might be true, or you might on the other side be like, well, we're a bakery and this really isn't that relevant, or we make toiletry products and it's just not that relevant. Like it always is. But this is just an example of electrified boat engines. So essentially within that private market of super yachts, the owners have so much money and money to waste that they spend a lot of money on R&D, and it's the research and development that actually funds massive change in the maritime industry. So yeah, while you might think that one thing is not relevant or that your industry is not going to be affected by this, I think it's actually better just to pioneer, to innovate, and to step into that kind of innovative space. So, as if we did not have enough of analogies, but I'm so sick of being a part of conversations where sustainability is described in endless acronyms, or like business jargon that I don't understand, or things like this. And I want to make it as simple as possible. So this is tried and tested with my family, and who are not in this space at all, and they have been able to help me outline and how this conversation could be had in a way that it's still very relatable for people. So, how is sustainability health? And honestly, it's kind of funny because but sustainability is not one thing. And using the analogy of health, I think is very helpful to help understand it, because there's varied interpretations. For some people, health might mean eating well, but for someone else, it might mean getting up early and going for a walk. For someone else, it might mean, having the conversations that they're uncomfortable having. Or for some, it'll mean going to the doctor or the GP. And for some, it might mean never needing to go to the doctor and the GP in the first place. But that idea of health is really broad, and it's widely recognised as important, but it is somewhat vague. And there are varied interpretations of what is health. So again, for some people, they would maybe say it's about BMI, it's about weight, it's about. For other people, it would be entirely an entirely different metric of what is health. But the varied interpretations doesn't really diminish anyone's experience of it, as long as a person, an individual, feels like they are healthy, or is prioritizing their health in a way that they want to. That's totally fine. Um, so then, if we think about it, it also needs context for action and an individualized strategy. So whether a person decides to get a PT and a dietitian and a doctor and have, all the health and all the guidance, or whether they decide that they want to find the resources that they need to do health on their terms, well, that's actually something that we feel really strongly about should be available. So rather than making our conversation around sustainability really full of shite and full of jargon, the whole idea is that we help businesses understand their individualized strategy, and in some cases deliver it entirely by themselves, but not necessarily. We are here, we provide consultancy services, but again, just like health, you need to have the context in order to know what you need to change, and an individualized strategy is so important. And then a proactive rather than a reactive approach. It shouldn't take a heart attack for you to want to get healthy. It shouldn't take a big health event for you to think, what, I've spent 15 years really ignoring my health and not doing anything for it. So if you were to be proactive rather than reactive, you could actually prevent that big health event from happening in the first place. And that's exactly the same with this. So rather than getting a slap off your customers whenever, if for example you lose a huge contract because your next competitor actually did do the thing that you're procrastinating and not doing, well, that hurts. That would sting, and you could actually be proactive against that and go to that customer before this is even a conversation and say, by the way, this is what we do, this is what makes sense for us, this is the strategy, and this is what we've taken action on. And then there's also then the competitive edge that actually has, and how that has an effect on it. So then, if we go to the basics, obviously there's an acronym that we really love here, and it's environmental, social, and governance. So, environmental is really your actions. It's about your carbon emissions, adopting renewable energy, managing waste responsibly. Then, if we're thinking about social, it is actually more the fair labour practices, diversity, inclusion, and community engagement. And then governance is your ethical business practices. So transparency, accountability, all the documentation that you would need to kind of that leadership would be undertaken, and really making sure that the business has the structures in place that even if the team were to change, that this is still the way that we do business. So when we look at it like this is sustainability. So focusing on one thing like our carbon footprint, or focusing on just, a single element like our diversity metrics, or maybe, water use metrics, having a single thing is actually one of the issues in the way that we have this conversation at the minute. It really needs to be this like broad stroke, looking at it at a holistic level, looking at what strategy would work for you, and yeah, and then going from there. So I wonder, okay. Um, and if you are struggling with all of this, and if you're maybe thinking, this is not what business is, my business is here to make money, it's not my business's responsibility to do XYZ, 88% of Gen Z are actually willing to pay more for sustainable brands. So that is obviously a huge part of the market. And I am one of these people. I'm not quite Gen Z, but I definitely would pay more for my preferred brands. But not only would I pay more for them, I'd advocate so much louder for them. I would send it to people. I would know my friends who would also be in, like in that space, and I would absolutely like it's a conversation that then is have other people are having on your behalf. And an important note on this particular statistic is that by 2030, millennials and Gen Z will actually surpass the baby boomers in buying power. So that is an estimated wealth transfer of like, well, I have a figure here of nearly $70 trillion. Although I imagine that that's only in America. This is the market that we're moving into. All of these elements of sustainability are they're working on a timeline of 2030, 2035, 2050, looking at those timelines, then who's going to matter then, who's going to be a part of that. So focusing on the younger generation is definitely a viable way of going about it. So this this might sound like a load of hassle, and it absolutely can be. This can be a nightmare and it can be difficult. And I have clients who have already said, look, we've tried and we've done this, and it was so annoying. And that is totally normal. If you go on it alone, if you go on it without a strategy, or if you are just trying to make sense of things, but the resources that you're using don't make sense, because some of them don't. Remember, some people will want to confuse you because they want you to come to them to buy, which I think is a real disservice to what it is. And then, like, what is sustainability? But then there's also the people who are putting out misinformation about sustainability because they don't care, or they're working on another agenda. They actually don't want us to take action on this. So it definitely can be difficult, but it doesn't have to be. And so if you think about it, like a lot of other business functions, you could either spend loads or you could spend very little. You could look around the business and have a think about it, put a few strategic people in a room and have a conversation, and really pick off the low hanging fruit first. So do the things that save you money first. Then when you have savings in mind, like in your pocket, it's so much easier to say, okay, well, based on what we've saved in this financial year and based on what we want to spend in the next financial year, we actually only need that future innovation has a return on investment of such and such. But you can actually kind of factor it in, and then it makes economic sense, as well as becoming more energy efficient, which is better for all of these kind of metrics and certifications and things that are in this space. And according to Deloitte, so obviously it is one of these things where it's one thing for me to tell it, and I'm a passionate environmentalist and I love it, and I love the work that we do for the businesses that we work with, and I get really excited about it. But I want to also just sort of like keep it in mind. So some of these are from the big four or similar, McKinsey, and they're just sort of like to demonstrate the market trends. So according to Deloitte, 73% of UK consumers prefer brands that are aligned with their values. For example, people who care about their dog care about their dog food. You know, like they care about the impact that's going to have on their dog. People who care about water, surfers, water sports enthusiasts quite often will be really aligned with businesses that are preventing marine pollution, or you know, there's a real tie between, and it doesn't need to be values. It can be really specific, you know. And then we have the McKinsey report, the McKinsey report was that there was a trend of 15% higher revenue growth for businesses with ESG commitments. And that is a really loose term. ESG commitments, again, like health, that's just like saying higher revenue growth for people, or for people who are healthy. But it's testament to the fact that there is, like, the ESG commitments, there's governance in those businesses. So there's governance to kind of make sure that the structure is going to be in place. There's targets on their environmental metrics. So all your environmental metrics will cost you money: water, waste, and energy. So if you have targets on reducing those, obviously you're going to be doing better. And then in the social sense of things, where you are resonating with your employees, where you're connecting with your consumers to the point that they advocate for you, where you are working with communities and having a real impact on things, and then on marketing and advertising on top of that, obviously there's going to be a high growth trajectory for those kind of interactions. And then, just to highlight, this is not a checklist. It is not a nice to have. It is absolutely fundamental to being in business in 10 years, that your business, as in like the whole thing, gets its head around it. So it is your job to teach your employees. It is your job to make sure that your senior stakeholders are bought in. And for any senior stakeholders that are having resistance to it, of sure, listen to them, hear them out, but definitely try and have constructive conversations to make sure that they are not just dictating because this is the way we've always done things. because business is changing, and the basic structure of business, obviously, I appreciate that is kind of cyclical and constant, but there are so many ways in which you would be doing a disservice to your organization if you don't take action on these things, because you will have those problems with lagging behind in compliance and costing yourselves more money. Big businesses in particular retail or require their suppliers detailed ESG reporting to be a part of their procurement process. So if you want to sell to Tesco or a big contractor or the Department of Environment or the prisons department, even the Department of Education, particularly, all of these big commercial opportunities and big entities that have a budget to spend in the market that you might be competing for, they are going to be asking for this as part of their ESG reporting. So, and there's also within the public sector specifically, there's sustainability criteria on the questions, but there's also questions around your understanding of the UN Sustainable Development Goals and how can your participation in the project help to deliver on the SDGs that they have outlined. And there's also questions about social value and the social value that can be provided by your organization working with it. If you are a micro enterprise, if you are a female owned business or minority owned business, you would be you would get preferential treatment if you talk about that, if you bring it out there. Also, if you pay above the living wage. So there's obviously the minimum wage, which the government has conveniently renamed to the living wage. It's not that one, it's the real living wage, which is a couple of pound more. That living wage, if you pay that, get it certified with the Living Wage Foundation. We've just done it at ESG Made Easy. It's an easy to do process, but it means that you can demonstrate that you're looking after your staff and that you're paying well. So for any organisations that are those things already, highlight them, talk about them. That's a kind of a part of this conversation. And if everybody wants it, how are how businesses are doing better financially doesn't, like, basically, if it's such a big conversation, why is everybody not doing it? And it's a little bit like anything at the beginning of anything. Why wouldn't you not be doing it? Like, why was I not buying Bitcoin whenever that was coming out? I knew it existed. I just didn't get any. Like, it's like everyone, and don't buy Bitcoin, it's not great for the environment. But yes, there's this thought that, like, well, if it was so good and everyone wants it, yeah, I would already be doing it. And that's the point. You should already be doing it. So the investing a little bit at the beginning of your ESG journey is a good idea, so that you have an idea of what it is that you want to do. So you have a very clear timeline, expectations, milestones. Those kind of things are much easier to set out when you have a strategy. And then obviously this leads to your cost savings, revenue growth, financial term benefits, and they far outweigh the upfront costs. And rubbish was the point where I was supposed to tell you about my client who've saved an absolute fortune on their bins, but I jumped the gun and I talked about it earlier. So, but they're saving over £10,000 a year. And guess what? We can help. But we can actually help you to help yourself either way. And we'll talk a bit more about that towards the end. So, what is this and what do we need to do? So, this step by step outline of what you need to do to start sustainability in your business is begin with materiality. That is vital. Then we're going to be chatting about a stakeholder assessment strategy based on the industry and size, and then decision on which or any certifications are best for your business. And most importantly is taking action. In terms of materiality, we use and recommend the SASB Materiality Finder. It is so simple. It has all of the non-negotiable reporting elements that you need in your industry. And it's a good idea to have conversations with your team to find the easy wins, because there'll be things the sorry, that's I'm not the business. Having conversations with the people who are operationally running your business or in the kind of function of it, they will know the easy wins. They will know the ways in which things are inefficient or things could be improved. So how to do this is outline your key stakeholders. So that is all the people that matter to your business. So your customers, employees, investors, suppliers, regulators, community members. It could be your neighbours. It could be any people or persons who are affected by your business operations. So know who your stakeholders are and know how you talk with them. Then if we think about the industry context, you do get an insight into your industry context in that SASB, in their reports and the things that they make available. Whenever you go in, you'll see you select an industry, you select the subcategory in the industry that is most relatable to you, and that's where you go from. But they do have some really good resources in there. And you'll also find that if there's associations or groups in your industry, that they will quite often have commissioned reports, or they'll have insight or maybe blog articles or conversations with other members. But definitely try to find out what is going on in your industry, who are the recognizable green business in your industry, and how can you kind of maybe give them a bit of a run for their money. Ask for feedback. So talk to these people, talk to your competitors, talk to the industry, talk to the associations that represent groups within the industry, and talk to your stakeholders. And when you do that, you will find out very valuable information for your business, and you'll be able to understand more like what would be the best course of action. And then in terms of reporting frameworks, so they're all they all have slightly different processes. They all have different names. There's a different connotation with each of the certifications. But for the most part, they're actually all fundamentally based on metrics that are very similar to the SASB, with some additional ones in terms of supply chain for some of the certifications. But I would say that if you look at the SASB outline through their materiality finder, if you can answer everything that they're asking you for, then pause. If you have customers that are requesting specific certifications, those are the best ones to go for. Have a customer-led sustainability strategy. That's a very smart thing to do. And if your customers aren't asking for anything, look at what is typical in your industry. And if your industry is not doing anything, then ask your employees what they care about. And when you get these conversations in your pocket, you'll know which one to do, but don't do all of them. And no one's asking you to do all of them, because even if you have B Corp, you would be unlikely to be asked. If someone needed SEDEX, they would say, "Oh, okay, but you have B Corp, so then that's a pass." So there is usually permissions to kind of interchange the ones that are focused on the same areas. And then we have the review and communicate. So obviously this sounds like a lot of conversation. It is, but make sure that you're not just chatting, like that it's formative and it is being recorded and noted. If people have taken the time to be a part of a conversation, to be a part of a round table maybe within the business, have minutes drawn up and share them with them. Make sure that everyone's kind of point of view is considered and then shared back with them as well. Just to make sure that they're happy with what it is that you've said within that. And then in terms of your stakeholder assessment, so this is the process of identifying and communicating with and involving all of these people who have an influence on your business. How you do this will depend on your organization. You could use Google Forms, you could use interviews, you could use a research company. Any of things are available. A little bit like we said at the very beginning of this, whether you want to spend a lot or you want to spend a little, it is attainable, but it just depends on how you want to implement it. And then when we're talking about our industry specifics, every business is different I do acknowledge that, but there is a standardized expectation of what the industry needs to report on. And the, again, SASB materiality finder, that highlights what should matter or what you should take for granted, that these metrics are valid and important in your industry. But you will have probably another third, so say that represented like 60% of the your sustainability summary, you'll probably have another 40% of things that your business wants to add on because they are relevant to you. This is the SASB, and yeah, if you just, we've said it several times now, and you can pause the video and just look it up. And then making it officially official. So credibility via frameworks. If you can explain the if you can explain what you're doing in your business via a recognized standard like the UN Global Compact, the B Corp, or ISO, it's much more recognizable. And also, the person or the party that you're communicating to would have in their sort of subconscious understanding of things, oh, that's been verified by someone else, so I know that it's legit. And so it kind of it helps to build trust, and it also opens the door to new partnerships. Quite often these organizations also highlight not the UN Global Compact but the other two. When you highlighted it within your website or your public conversation, it would come up then in, if we searched your industry and ISO, there, or your industry and B Corp, that'll come up. And on the B Corp specifically, they have a directory, as does the SBTi. So there's a few of them that they give a lot of recognition, which means that it's really, really good for the reputational things. Some of the key ESG frameworks, again, not a recommendation for any of them. Know what matters to your customers, go with that first. If not, go with what's in your industry. If not, go with what your employees prefer. The SBTi is actually just a target setting exercise for your greenhouse gas emissions. You need to be measuring your greenhouse gas emissions to the greenhouse gas protocol standard and in a way that's verified by a third party. We would recommend Susneo for this, but we will hopefully have another video further on in the series where we talk more in depth about Susneo. There's also B Corp, an incredibly detailed standard that is internationally recognized and does an incredible job of marketing other B Corps and within the B Corp movement. Ecovadis is a supply chain request, so it would typically be that someone that you want to sell to or a client that you already sell to changes their procurement standards and that they ask for Ecovadis to be included. I don't think that anyone needs to proactively go and do Ecovadis. This is one that you definitely wouldn't do without a customer recommending you into the standard. And then ISO, obviously, very recognizable standard of quality. Honorary mentions, there is the TCFD, and I mention that because they have a really good process, and I'm going to show you that because essentially they all follow the same process. They have slightly different questions or maybe a slightly different lane. They're really, really similar. And greenhouse gas protocol is not a standard. It's not a certification. It is a protocol that your carbon management system or the way in which you're reporting your greenhouse gas emissions has to be in line with this protocol. So just because that's quite often confused. What do you need to do? This is it. Create a focus group, cross-functional focus group. Make sure that there's diverse representation from people in your business. Conduct a gap analysis. Understand what you do not have and what you need to do. Integrate governance. I'm not even going to read all of these because this is it. This is it. So take your chance, take a screenshot. This is all you need. Integrate governance. Then look at strategic planning for climate risks. If you're in a floodplain, if you're in an area that is affected by drought and you have a water intensive process, if you are in an area that might be affected by fire, make sure that you're really having that as forefront of your focus. Horrible, sorry, I just had my hair. And then integrate risk management. So make sure that you have a good understanding of what your risks are and have them all mapped out. develop proactive risk management process, and transparently disclose the risks. So that's actually a part of the getting good scores on the governance element of it, is that your risks are all well considered. Conduct scenario analysis, set metrics and targets, systemize transparent communications, and this little cycle could just go on and on and on. Just do what works for you. Making the decision on what to implement, just it really is, it's about your business. It's about having those conversations and then making your mind up. And potentially you're facing challenges. You might have a lack of clarity on what sustainability strategies are, or that you're feeling like you've already missed the boat. You haven't. Get started now. And then there's also the increase in regulatory pressures, which are in public tenders. They're obviously coming in terms of ESOS and having to report on your financial accounts and things. But then there's also the pressure of the burden of administration for the things that you need to do for your clients as well. So we appreciate that this is really challenging for our friends who are watching today. And there's also just the whole market is changing. So winning with ESG is about improvements, and these improvements can help you to increase revenue growth. It can improve your access to public procurement, and it can also build your reputation. And that is where the magic is. And I'm just, because I'm hilarious, this is recycled. I acknowledge that, but it actually, as I was putting this together, it still stood, so I kept it in. And so get started today. I am happy to offer anyone on this call a free initial consultation. Just send me an email. You can email me at steph@esgmadeeasy.co.uk. I will not likely put that in the show notes because then I will get spammed. So if you want to email me at steph@esgmadeeasy.co.uk. We have our 2025 sustainability strategy pack if you want to get started. It is a ridiculously good offer for the people that have taken it up, mostly because our small team just always wants to over deliver. This is what is included in it. So we actually have a materiality overview. So we would do your materiality survey for you. You would get that SASB document. We would add some of the elements that might be important. Other organisations charge hundreds, and actually, they like, if you were going further afield and not in Northern Ireland, they would charge far more than this. Stakeholder mapping. So we would look at your key clients, key customers, structure of your business, and build that out for you and just show you what your stakeholder map looks like. It also has a fully functional guide. So this it's embedding sustainability, and it's a complete DIY of what you need to do to do it yourself. And that's what I mean in terms of the way this industry is gatekept, and people want to keep all their information to themselves, and then, or you have to pay to work with me in order for me to give you anything valuable, is so ridiculous. Like, in order for the planet and for us all to actually just make the changes that we need to make, we need to have good information. So we are delighted to actually offer all of this. We also have a 90-minute strategy call, which can be delivered in one 90-minute session, or a way in which we've conducted it, and it was really beneficial, was actually to split it into two parts. So do the first part with maybe 45 minutes and go through some of the things, get initial information, and then send over all of the documentation. Within this embedded sustainability document, there are lists of everything that could exist. What you would do is look through that list and say, yep, of those 16, there's probably these 8 are the ones that we're going to prioritize next year. And then these ones are 2025. And then the other ones we'll put in the medium term. And then the other ones are just not relevant, or they wouldn't apply to us. So there's so much, there's so much in that. We also will be given a free copy of my book, ESG Made Easy, and that just outlines why sustainability matters, and lots of helpful resources for just getting it done. So yeah, if you would like to do this, just let me know. Again, email me at steph@esgmadeeasy.co.uk, and we can get organised and send across the link. I will put the link for this package in the show notes as well. But yeah, So that is pretty much it. Um, we are transitioning towards the Q&A element of the conversation, and I'm wondering, I think I don't know how to do this on YouTube, so I will work on my technical skills for us to be able to offer this the next time, because I can't seem to see where other people would put questions in. But I would love to just heartily thank you for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it. If you want to connect with us at ESG Made Easy, please reach out, let me know. We are practitioners of Ecovadis. We have resources around the SDG, and provide services for our clients ranging from sustainability strategy to sustainability communications, how to interact with the market, or the like feet on the ground support with the documentation and things like that. We have a podcast with an incredible series on B Corp coming out, and we also have post B Corp. We have a even more incredible series, or maybe I shouldn't say that. All my guests are amazing, and I appreciate that they've taken time to be a part of it. But I was a part of a group called The Break in Spain. It was all female European sustainability innovators and entrepreneurs and on my cohort, and the ladies that I was there with have actually come on one by one and have been a part of the podcast too. So our podcast is fab, and please come and check it out. We have actually utilized some of our older episodes um from our Farm and Carbon podcast. So we have some really touching stories about farmers and stuff on there too. But yeah, that is us. That is the conversation today. I will be back next Thursday to talk about easy ESG strategy. This is one of a 6-part series. The next After next week, the next few will be mid-February and beyond, just because of other constraints that are in the diary already. But thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. If you have any questions, you want to know anything more about this, please let us know, and we'll try to stay on questions in the comments as well. But if you need something urgently, just contact us directly.